Hello and welcome to episode 18 of Question and Answer. I am your host, Basa, previously known as Basa Bhikkhu or Basa Mahatera, and now often known as David Reynolds or even as John Reynolds, because technically John is my first name. But that is all incidental, I suppose. Lots of questions as usual. I do apologize that it has taken me more than a week after putting out the announcement that I'd be doing one soon, but one thing leads to another, and so it's like a week later that finally I am recording this and trying to answer your questions, and there are some difficult questions this time, some rather unusual ones, and a few easy ones, which I always appreciate. So, without any further rambling, the first question is from Sam I Am. And Sam I Am says, fun scenario. Let's say you elevated and came across the actual path of truth of the Buddha and found out that you were following Mara all along, who was trying to deceive you into a confused state of knowing. What would you do and how would you move forward? How would you Now, what would you tell people about it? Well, this is really a strange question. I'm not exactly sure how to answer it or even really how to understand it. See, let's say you elevated, so that would be like became enlightened or at least became very wise and came across the actual path of truth of the Buddha and found out that you were following Mara all along. Well, if you were following Mara all along, then how would it cause you to be elevated? That's one question here. Who was trying to deceive you into a confused state of knowing? Yeah, well, that's what Mara allegedly does. He notoriously is trying to deceive everybody, including the Buddha himself, especially before the Buddha became enlightened. Um, so in a way, we kind of are following a path of Mara, or at least a path that has been influenced by Mara. Um, but then we managed to get elevated. um, what would you do and how would you move forward? Yeah, again, it's like, well, I mean, you somehow managed to be elevated even though you were following the path of Mara. Um, so I guess following the path of Mara in that respect wouldn't be all bad, would it? Huh. What would you tell people about it? Well, I mean, if after you got wiser, you found out that there was a better path to follow, sort of, I mean, the Buddha was did that. I mean, he was practicing all these extreme austerities and cultivating trance states and so forth. And then he found out a better way and he taught the better way. So, yeah, I suppose, how would I move forward? Gosh. Yeah, it's such a hypothetical. It's such a strange hypothetical that it's really hard to answer. Although it's kind of a weird question, just because you're following Mara all along, but then you become enlightened or elevated by doing that. Somehow in spite of doing that, I mean, something just slams you into a state of enlightenment. Maybe that's what happens. It's like you're practicing and practicing, and you think you're doing well, but Mara's just like, laughing at you and just stringing you along or whatever. And then you have like a near death experience or something that slams you into enlightenment. But even then, I mean, following the path of Mara got you where you are. So yeah, it's just kind of a strange question that you follow the path of Mara and then become enlightened anyway. Then what do you tell people? I mean, well, if following Mara got you enlightened somehow, then who knows? Maybe it would work for other people too. But you find the actual path of truth of the Buddha. I mean, yeah. Then, I mean, I guess you'd teach the actual path of truth of the Buddha if that's what you discovered. So I'll just move on to the next question. Also by Sam I Am, who does not like green eggs and ham. How many Buddhist practitioners do you think would survive if they were thrown into the jungle or a wild nature environment for 1 to 3 months with nothing? like some of those survival shows, survival Buddhist. If they died because they didn't know what they were doing with nature, would this be some karma that they would have to deal with on the next go? People may try to render this practitioner as a great or wise man, even though he was manhandled by nature pretty easy. What do you think about this? Well, if you took devout Buddhists and threw them out into a wilderness naked with nothing, um, I doubt that they'd do much better than anybody else. In fact, like a strictly practicing monk, like a really strictly practicing monk, there are stories like in the Visuddhimagga about them just voluntarily dying rather than killing anything. Like there's a story in the Visuddhimagga about this monk who's living out in the forest. He's very strict, and some robbers rob his place where he's staying, and they tie him up with vines, and the vines are still rooted. So the vines are still living plants. So he's all bound up, lying there in this forest, and somehow they like tip over his lantern or something, and they start a forest fire. And this monk is so strict that he will not harm a living plant, even to get loose. And then he burned to death in the forest fire and became an arahant in the process. So yeah, I mean, any devout Buddhist who's keeping all five precepts and not killing anything, I mean, yeah, he's gonna have a rougher time than the people who are just go into survival mode and are eating bugs and frogs and things. So, would it be there some karma that they would have to deal with on the next go? I mean, obviously, it seems pretty obvious to me that them dying in a jungle would be less. Um, I mean, the real karmic thing with them being thrown into this jungle in the first place. If you're thrown naked into a jungle, I mean, that's big karma right there. Um, and the fact that a lot of them would die off, like the story of that monk who just let himself burn to death. I mean, whether they die easy or whether they survive, is largely irrelevant to how wise they are. So they might just say, well, I'm naked in this jungle. I'm just going to sit here and meditate until I can't breathe anymore or something, you know. Or, I mean, they could just be like go into survival mode and just kill everything and just survive that way. Just going caveman mode, or even, I mean, like cannibalism and stuff. I mean, you could survive doing that. So, yeah, I mean, whether you survive in nature, in like alone in a jungle or not, um, is largely irrelevant to how wise you are. And yeah, and how much karma would you make or that sort of thing? It would depend on your mental states. I mean, if you died with equanimity, then you'd be making less karma than if you survived by just going absolute ruthless killer. So, yeah, it depends on mental states, what kind of karma you make. It's not a matter of physical actions, as I say just about every show. So I think I'll just move on to the next one, also by Sam I Am. Will you think about changing or opening up some of the language to broaden the attention of an audience, or maybe getting more creative about the subject matter? For example, talking about karma and samsara, relating it to the matrix, and using other B terms. I think B might be Buddhist here. I don't think many new people will know exactly what you mean if you do not use clarifications. Since you are open-minded, it may work well to do this, and it would attract more people to get into the real benefits of the path. What do you think? Um, I don't know. I think that the number of technical terms I use is pretty limited, and I usually do translate them or explain them. Um, Karma, like I say, is it's like a volition, or it's like the momentum of your mind. And samsara, it is true. I use samsara kind of ambiguously, because I do sort of equate it with maya or illusion. That samsara itself is it implies unreality. Um, Orthodox Theravada doesn't entirely go that far. Um, Orthodox Theravada does think that samsara, like, the at least the atoms of which everything is composed, are real. Um, But yeah, getting back to the question though, I mean, I don't know. I'm not really good at elementary stuff. I mean, I like talking about what is of interest to me, and if people also find that interesting, that's great. But just like trying to change the way I talk for the sake of attracting newbies, um, yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of stubborn. Um, maybe, yeah, if somebody has any particular suggestions, but I think I'm just going to move on to the next question. I'm sorry, Sam, I'm not answering your questions very well, although these are really kind of strange questions. Okay. Next question, also from Sam I am. I have noticed a bit of exposure rolling out of the glory monks. You know, the ones that are making profit and having other issues with knowingly not following the path correctly, but acting like they do for some kind of personal gain or cowardice. Excuse my rude language, this one is only for the really corrupted ones. Maybe they will scatter like roaches when the light is turned on. What do you think about this slow movement towards truth? Do you think karmic returns will happen in this lifetime since there is quite a bit of corruption presently? Do you think the rise in a better movement has more ease to also become corrupted at a faster pace? Well, I mean, it's always been corrupt. I mean, even in the Buddhist time, I mean, notoriously, you had like the group of six monks who were all engaging in all sorts of naughtiness. Um, that I mean, according to the legend, the Buddha had to start making Vinaya rules because there were sloppy monks who were just doing inappropriate actions, and so he had to start making rules. And I mean, I lived in a devoutly Buddhist country. I mean, Burma may be the most devoutly Buddhist country in the world, and yeah, the sangha there is very corrupt. It's sort of like medieval Europe, where you have some genuine saints, old monks and nuns who are very saintly, and the lay people, the common villager, they just have devout, just stainless steel, unquestioning faith in their religion. But as a general rule, the ecclesiastical structure is very corrupt, and most monks really aren't even trying to become enlightened. So, I mean, the whole corruption thing, I mean, it's just human nature. It's just always going to be that way, or for the foreseeable future anyway, unless there's some sort of profound, profound change in the entire human race that somehow makes us better. We reach the next stage of consciousness or something. Um, One part of the question here: do you think karmic returns will happen in this lifetime? Of course. I mean, they're always happening in this. I mean, yeah, they're always happening. Karmic returns, they happen in this lifetime, in the next lifetime, assuming that there is a next lifetime. Yeah, I mean that is just it's the momentum of your mind. Like I said, karma is the momentum of your mind as you're creating your reality, and so everything that you do is going to influence that. It's not just people think of karma as you know you get killed by somebody because 2,000 years ago you were a Roman soldier who killed people or something. But I mean that can happen theoretically, but at the same time, I mean you can have instantaneous karma. You get mad and punch the wall and break your hand or something. That would be instantaneous karma right there. So it's happening all the time. I mean your karma is is a reaching fruition all the time, just constantly. So let's see. I hope I at least answered that question. Do you think the rise in a better movement has more ease to also become corrupted at a faster pace? Well, the wiser a movement is, the more easily it can be corrupted because the more it can fall. Like Islam arguably hasn't become very corrupt because it was kind of, I mean, it wasn't extremely wise to begin with. But if you have something like an enlightened tradition, is like an enlightened founder, then chances are most of his followers are not going to be enlightened, including the followers who are determining like what is orthodox dogma after the founder dies. That happened with Christianity, it happened with Buddhism also. Um, so yeah, I mean, the higher the movement, the farther down it can fall, and probably faster. Yeah, so that's true. You're very fortunate if you can have a succession of several enlightened um, disciples becoming teachers who then have enlightened disciples. I mean, that does happen, but generally after maybe several, you know, yeah, then it peters out, and then you have to wait for circumstances to cause another upsurgence or resurgence, like a renaissance, which has happened in Buddhism a number of times, and it can happen again, although there would have to be fertile soil for that to grow, and I don't think it exists yet in the West or in the East. So before I answer this next one, I have to open this Red Bull. Red Bull. Gotta open this. Take a drink. And the last question by Sam I Am is, why are you drinking Red Bull? Do you think the chemicals will cloud your clarity? Well, the reason why I'm drinking Red Bull is to increase my clarity, because I work today, and I get tired in the evenings. I'm not completely at my best, although I have delayed this Q&A long enough that I don't want to wait until next weekend. And often during the weekends, I'm just like in like wet rag mode, just completely relaxed and not wanting to do very much sometimes. So it's hard to predict what kind of mood I'm going to be in. So I'm just going for it. And so I just drink Red Bull because it has like the same effect of coffee, but um, or maybe even it's sort of a more gentle than just taking straight caffeine. So, and it's supposed to have other things in it too, like taurine, whatever that is. It's supposed to be good for you. So that's why I drink Red Bull. Yeah, I mean it's like a stimulant, and it stimulates my mind, and hopefully it improves the quality of this Q&A by at least 2%. And so the next question is from Eric. And Eric says, do you have any thoughts on prayer wheels in general and so-called digital prayer wheels stored on the hard drive, DVDs, etc.? Thanks. Well, in Theravada Buddhism, there aren't prayer wheels, or at least I've never seen a Theravada Buddhist prayer wheel. It seems to be more of a Vajrayana, I think it's mainly like a Tibetan thing. And I mean, the prayer wheel itself, whether it's like a real wheel or whether it's digital, I mean, it's just a dead object. It's not generating any kind of blessings or anything. Especially if there's nobody there to perceive it. So it'd be like a Dhamma book. If the Dhamma book is just sitting on a shelf, nobody's reading it. I mean, it's dead. It's not doing anything. It's not generating anything. It's just sitting there. And the wheel can be spinning and spinning, but if there's nobody there perceiving it, then I mean, there's going to be no real spiritual benefit. The benefit is from people perceiving it and their own mental states. It's like tarot cards or something, or what else, like a Ouija board or something. Like this, let's just stick with tarot cards. I mean, um, at the factory where they make the tarot cards, they don't have a special machine that injects like prognosticative powers into these cards. It's just paper, like laminated. It's got some ink on it, for the designs and all that. And it's just they just sit there. I mean, they're just dead objects, and just like playing cards or business cards or whatever. And it's really the mental states of the person who uses them that determines whether they're going to be useful, whether they have any kind of spiritual effect, anything like that. So I think prayer wheels are the same. I mean, they're just dead matter, and until someone is perceiving them, and if you got someone who really believes in them, and they feel really happy and uplifted to think of all these blessings radiating in all directions, then they can have uplifted mental states and so forth, and that can radiate out from them. But the wheel itself is just a wheel. I mean, you might as well be spinning a bicycle wheel as far as I'm concerned. So the next question is from the person who always has his name in Japanese characters, but which I think is pronounced Yuichiro. And Yuichiro says, supposing someone like Mao had good intentions and was just staggeringly incompetent, what would the karmic implications of that be? In general, it seems like ideologies that have good intentions cause the most suffering. Well, and Mao himself, that's kind of a good example. I assume Yuichiro intended that Mao was staggeringly incompetent. Like, I mean, he was kind of a bad guy too, very ruthless and willing to kill people or have people killed that were interfering with his agenda. But I think most of the people who died in China under Mao just died of starvation because of the incompetence of the way the agricultural reform was being done, and a lot of it was just people afraid to tell Mao that his plan, his idea wasn't working. Um, but yeah, I mean, um, you can have people with good intentions that just mess up horribly. You know, like Jimmy Carter was kind of that way. I mean, people compare Joe Biden with Jimmy Carter, but at least Jimmy Carter was intelligent and had moral principles. And but still, I mean, he just messed things up. America really did not do well under Jimmy Carter. Or you could have some like wannabe Ashoka, the Emperor Ashoka, who he took Buddhism so seriously that he just disbanded most of his armies, and it was largely out of respect for his saintliness that the neighboring countries didn't just invade. But it could be that you have some wannabe Ashoka who just disbands his armies because he thinks violence is wrong, which is um, understandable. And then they just immediately get brutally invaded by barbarians or whatever. So, what kind of karma you would make from that? Really, it's karma is mental states. So, it could be that it would be like the remorse of realizing that his own fuck ups essentially resulted in just widespread universal misery. But yeah, so long as you have good intentions and you're acting on good intentions, you're not really making bad karma. Somebody's calling me. Uh, okay, where was I? I need to do. That was kind of confusing. Where's the questions? Oh, here they are. All right. Let's see. Where was I? Oh, yeah, yeah. So I mean, if you have good intentions and you mess up, then the mess up, unless it's caused by like delusion or something that's accompanying your good intentions, then yeah, I mean, you're not really making bad karma through that. It would be through your reactions afterwards. So let's say you have good intentions and you accidentally cause 1 million people to die, then yeah, it's bound to affect your attitude, just the perception that you killed 1 million people, and then you're probably not going to be very happy about that. So there could be like a lot of remorse and guilt and so forth that would then mess you up. That would be the bad karma, not just the trying to do something good and it turns out bad, because really the intentions were good. So from a Buddhist point of view, you really didn't do anything bad. Okay, so I think I hope I answered that one. So the next question is from Andre. And Andre says, the following poem by Walt Whitman is often in my head these days. Roaming in thought after reading Hegel. Roaming in thought over the universe, I saw the little that is good steadily hastening towards immortality, and the vast all that is called evil I saw hastening to merge itself and become lost and dead. Unquote. That's the end of the poem. Is it normal at times to lean more towards aversion before finally attaining dispassion and equanimity? If not, should I practice more metta? Thank you. Okay, so it seems like there's kind of two parts to this question. First is Walt Whitman, and I mean I've encountered this kind of idea before, where good is like growing and trying to fulfill itself, and the evil in the universe is kind of just doomed to just die out. But I really don't see things that way. Um, I think like just going with theistic language because it's easily understood by Westerners. Let's say that you got somebody, let's say a Hindu, and they become enlightened, and so they're going to look around. They're just going to see everything as God. When your eyes are perfect, you see everything as perfect. When you become enlightened, you look around, you just see enlightenment, so to speak. And so, I mean, even the badness is like a manifestation of God or perfection. But that was just me disagreeing with Whitman's poem. And I think the main part of the question here is it normal at times to lean more towards aversion before finally attaining dispassion and equanimity? Actually, the Visuddhimagga, for what it's worth, it's like the main commentarial work of Theravada Buddhism. It divides people up into 6 categories by temperament. You've got like greed, hate, and delusion, and then you've got like the 3 opposites of that. You've got intellect and wisdom, and uh, I don't remember the other one. I could sit here and rack my brains in silence and come up with it eventually, but it doesn't make for a good video. So they do point out that Buddhaghosa, the author of the Visuddhimagga, does point out that people who have the aversion temperament, the dosa temperament, they often become enlightened more quickly than people who have like a loving temperament, or like an accepting kind of temperament, because they have aversion for samsara, they want out. And so that can be um, like a motivation for practicing more intensely or more sincerely or more conscientiously. So yeah, I mean, Theravada Buddhism, Orthodox Theravada does say that if you have a lot of aversion in your temperament, it can help you to become enlightened. It wouldn't be just irritation with all the assholes that and they're like cutting you off on the highway and that kind of thing, but you can use your aversive temperament, um, as kind of a tool. It's sort of like you're using fire or something, and so I mean, you can use it as a means towards enlightenment by just having aversion for the whole mess of samsara. So let's see. I think that's it. Should I practice more metta? That's entirely up to you. I think most people who practice metta are kind of faking it or pretending. I've never been able to practice metta meditation systematically. Um, if I do radiate metta or beam metta at some other being, it's usually spontaneous. It's just my heart opens and it happens. But just sitting down and systematically, like you're following some of the suttas where you're just sending metta to all beings, all males, all females, all animals, all higher beings, all lower beings, and or just dividing the entire cosmos up into directions. You're beaming metta to the west, and you're beaming metta to the east, and up and down and intermediate directions, and all. Um, yeah, I mean I assume some people can do that, and it really works. But it seems to me like an intellectual exercise where you're just kind of like visualizing beaming yourself, beaming metta. Um, for me, it just doesn't work. I mean, I can't just turn metta on and off like flipping a switch. It just doesn't work that way for me. If it works for you, then fine. I mean, if it helps you to become wiser and better and happier, then go for it. But like I said, having aversion in general, like in your temperament as just part of your personality, it actually can be useful. So another question from Andre. Is it dangerous to tell Dhamma practitioners that getting angry burns up any good merit that they may have accumulated? I heard something like that in a Dhamma center once, not Theravada, and it seemed wrong to me. For one thing, it would lead to repression and exploding at one point because one could not take it anymore. All right. First of all, I do think that that is a false statement that getting angry burns up any good merit that they may have accumulated, because it's just adding new karma. It's not like erasing any past karma. It just doesn't work that way. So you can add new karma that maybe is going in the wrong direction, but yeah, you're not really burning up good merit that may have already accumulated. I just don't think that that is true. And so, is it dangerous to tell Dhamma practitioners that? Well, maybe it can be dangerous because, like I say, I really don't think that it's true. And yeah, people that try not to get angry, I mean, the best thing to do is not so much repress anger as just be mindful of it when it arises. Just watch the anger, and just how does it feel. And if you're not really an angry person, through my own experience, I can say that if you're usually not an angry person, then when you do get angry, it's actually easier to be mindful of that because it's so unusual and it's so blatant. It's like bright lights, it's like sirens and like police lights and stuff going off. So it's really noticeable. And then you can really observe what's going on in your body and in your mind and so forth. Um, so yeah, just trying to repress anger, that can lead to an explosion. I do agree with that. And so I'll move on to Andre's third and last question. Can you give the list and reference of the benefits of metta meditation? And that's an easy question to answer. Can I give the list and reference? Nope, I can't. I don't know. I assume there are like lists of the benefits of metta meditation. There's maybe some sutta in the Anguttara Nikaya, the 8 benefits of practicing metta meditation. But I really don't know what it is. You might try the Visuddhimagga again because it does have a section describing metta meditation. And we'll be talking about metta meditation a little farther down. It's the meditation on, usually the translation of metta is loving kindness. Um, Metta, it has the same root as the word mita, which is friend. So it's like friendliness, friendly feelings. Um, let's see. So can I give the list and reference of the benefits of metta meditation? No, I really don't know it. And I suppose I could make these Q&As a little better by studying up, like hunting down the reference or something. But yeah, like I said, I really have never been big on practicing metta meditation systematically. If I do generate metta, it's spontaneous. And it does happen sometimes, believe it or not. So the next question is from Tyr, I think, Tyr. And Tyr says, do you think it would be possible for you to describe what it was like living in the cave, how you spent your days, how long you were there, etc.? Sadhu. Um, I mean, that could be an entire video because I lived in several caves, and each cave was different, and like what it was like was different. How I spent my days was often different. How long was I there? Altogether, it added up to about 13 years in various caves. And I mean, I can give you the short version. And if people really want to know, I can just do a video talking about various caves I lived in and what it was like and so forth. But the very first cave I ever stayed in was in Thailand, and it was just one night, and it was really like, man, it was awful because I still had like thick wool robes from America. Hadn't even got to Burma yet, so I just get to Thailand before arriving in Burma, and we went to visit Uwe this legendary, very strict monk. He was like a Buddhist Rambo, and he lived in this cave that was. I mean, I looked into his cave once. All I saw was just pitch black, and he thought it was paradise, but he couldn't keep anything. He couldn't keep soap. He couldn't keep books or anything because the rats would chew it all up. He had to live in he had to sleep in a kind of hammock just to keep him up above the rats. And he paid me the honor of letting me sleep in a cave near his. And I mean, I won't give the whole story, but I mean, he told me that when you sleep, you got to cover yourself from head to toe or the rats will bite you. And it was true. I had rats on me that night, and I'm all covered up in just these thick wool robes in like 90-degree heat in Thailand, and mosquitoes, and there was a big whip scorpion on the wall, and I didn't get much sleep that night. Then after that, I spent about 3 years. It was like 4 rainy seasons, but it added up to 3 years of it was called Mandalay Gu. It was a cave at a monastery called Tongpulu Chaltsin Doya in central Burma. And it was just like a cube. It was an artificial cave dug into the side of a hill. It was like 8 feet by 8 feet by 8 feet. And it was about 20 degrees Fahrenheit cooler inside the cave than outside. But still, when it's 115 outside, it's still 95 inside. So it was like living in this sauna. And the next cave after that was I spent about 2 weeks living in a natural cave at Sabay Doya in southern Burma in Mon State. And there was a famous Sayadaw who lived there long before I lived there. But it was this huge block of granite that had this notch at the bottom. And so there was just this notch kind of like this where you could stay out of the rain. And so I lived there for 2 weeks after it started raining. I was living under a tree before that. And part of the time I was sharing the cave with a big land crab. And when it did rain, there were places where the water would drip in because the ceiling was kind of slanted inwards. So you'd have to know the dry places where it was okay to sleep and that kind of thing. And then, let's see, after that, the next cave was also a huge natural cave at Alando Kathapa National Park in northwestern Burma. And I spent a total of about 2 years there, off and on, not all at once. And it was huge. I mean, the entrance was maybe 100 feet wide and maybe 30 feet high, and it went in maybe 30 feet. So it was more of like an overhanging rock ledge than a cave. And it was the whole back wall was just lined with wasp nests. And I learned a lot about wasp psychology, what wasps like and don't like. They don't like the color blue, at least that species didn't. And yeah, I got stung a lot there. But and then let's see, after that, I think the last cave I lived in was at a place called One Bow Wildlife Refuge Monastery, and that was deluxe. That was it was a man-made cave dug into the side of a hill, and it had like a corridor that went in like 50 feet, and it had a shrine room and like 3 side rooms, and it had like this niche where you could put the water pot and you could do walking meditation inside. And um, I dug about 20% of it because when I got there, a lot of the ceilings were only about 6 feet high, and I'm like 6'2", and it was just really stuffy in there. So I dug upwards about 20% and had like a window installed and like a screen door to keep out bats, rats, snakes, and humans. And so I lived there about 8 years. That's one of the places where I lived longer than any place in my life was in that cave. I named it Tepo Guha, which has a double meaning. It can mean hot cave, which it was, or it can also mean like austere spiritual practice cave. So I killed 2 birds with 1 stone, if you'll pardon the violent non-Buddhist metaphor. Oh, I did live in one other cave, which I had dug down at the same monastery lower down. And I only spent a few months there. After, see, there were two monks living at this monastery. I lived up on the hill in the big cave, and then there was an old monk named Unandya who lived down by the river. And he kind of kept an eye on the main monastery, which was down below. That was where the well and the Dharma hall and some of the meditation cabins and stuff were. And then he got bitten by a cobra and died. And so I had to move down to keep an eye on the lower monastery because I was the only monk left, which mainly meant trying to keep villagers from poaching the wild jungle fowl. Um, but then I got really sick and had to spend the rains retreat in Rangoon. So yeah, it didn't last very long, that particular cave. So I've lived in several, and yeah, like the how I spent my days and so forth. A lot of the time, I mean, I lived in caves mainly just as a matter of survival because, as I said earlier, it was a lot cooler inside a cave than outside, and really, in central Burma, it's very furnace-like a lot of the time, like most of the year. So it was sort of like being a desert rat, just kind of living in a burrow. And I became largely nocturnal because during the day it was pretty much too hot to do much. So I tried to sleep as much as I could during the day. And I mean, there's really not a whole lot to do inside of a cave. I didn't have computers or anything back then, so I read a little bit, but mostly I'd be meditating, doing walking meditation, and maybe writing a little, lying on my back, looking up, staring at the ceiling, thinking about stuff, just kind of being a hermit. But yeah, I shouldn't go into too much details because there's other questions here I should answer. But if people really are interested in just my cave dwelling experiences, I did do a video with Brian Rue probably a couple years ago by now that was talking about my life as a cave dweller. So you can try and look that up too. Um, so I'll just move on to the next question. And this is from Trumptonshire Gahapati. And Trumptonshire Gahapati says, sorry about my ongoing series of questions about the gay butt sex. I do have other interests, I swear. I was thinking about the Dalai Lama's statements about homosexuality and sodomy, which were quoted by Otomo in a recent episode. And then he's got this quote of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, His Holiness, I said Holiness, Holiness the Dalai Lama, saying, we have to make a distinction between believers and unbelievers. From a Buddhist point of view, men to men and women to women is generally considered sexual misconduct. From society's viewpoint, mutually agreeable homosexual relations can be of mutual benefit, enjoyable, and harmless. He adds, even with your wife, using one's mouth or the other hole is sexual misconduct. Using one's hand, that is sexual misconduct. That's supposedly the Dalai Lama saying this. My question is, Panyo, do you have any idea what he's talking about? If is there really a teaching that homosexual behavior is okay for people in general, but not okay for Buddhist lay people, or that masturbation and non-vaginal sex acts are more misconductful than the missionary position, etc.? Maybe this is just a Tibetan thing. I don't know. Well, let's see. Where do I start? Where do I dive into this gay butt sex question? Um, yeah, with regard to the Dalai Lama saying that there is a distinction between believers and unbelievers, in a way that is kind of true. I mean, like somebody comes home from a hard day at work and they crack open a cold beer and they just drink one cold beer because they just like something cold and it goes down real nice and everything. Um, I mean, they're not necessarily doing anything bad. You know, they're not necessarily doing anything unwholesome, but it is against the rules. You know, it's against the precept of taking intoxicants. You know, it's the fifth precept. I undertake the precept to abstain from ale, wine, and any intoxicant which causes cloudedness of mind or heedlessness. So, I mean, you can make a distinction between Buddhist and non-Buddhist because there are certain Buddhist rules that aren't necessarily moral. I mean, like monks, I mean, they have to follow all kinds of rules that have nothing to do with morality. Like, um, a monk isn't allowed to open or close a door while holding his alms bowl in his hand, or even just there's rules that say you have to shave your head at least once every 2 months or two finger widths, whichever comes first. I mean, there's nothing immoral about having long hair. Or monks are only allowed to eat in the morning. Anyone who takes 8 precepts also is allowed to eat only in the morning. But there's nothing evil or unwholesome necessarily about eating dinner. So there is that, and that could be a large part of it, that it's just following precepts or just traditional interpretations of things that they're not necessarily universal morals. So that's part of it, I assume. With regard to the anal and the oral and the manual stimulation and all that being sexual misconduct, um, my understanding is that in Theravada Buddhism, sexual misconduct is primarily interpreted as just not having sex with somebody who's already spoken for, or you just don't love that person and you're just being promiscuous, that sort of thing. So it's different. It's not really specifying the actual acts. And the monks who were composing this sort of stuff tended to be um, a lot of them, I think, were kind of ignorant of sex in general anyway. And, they might not even know about some of this stuff. Um, so let's see. Is there really a teaching that homosexual behavior is okay for people in general, but not okay for Buddhist lay people? Well, again, we're getting into the realm of Buddhist ethics, which, just setting aside that there are rules and precepts that have little, if anything, to do with morality. It's just like etiquette or something. Also, there's the fact that Buddhist ethics are extremely finely tuned. It's not just if you do this, it's bad, but if you do that, it's good. Like in Christianity, for example. Although in some Christianity, it's very finely tuned. Like Catholic contemplatives. If you're a member of some contemplative order, then it can be very finely tuned there too. But in Buddhism, it's mental states. Whether something is wholesome or unwholesome ultimately depends on the mental states. And sex in general is considered to be at least a little bit immoral, almost no matter how you do it, just because just arising of desire. Desire is the cause of all suffering, and sex is one of the primary causes of desire. So, if you're really keen on becoming enlightened according to ancient Indian Buddhist tradition, then you should be celibate. Although, of course, a lot of people who are celibate are just like ragingly horny all the time. So there's that too. But I mean, it's not just sex. I mean, Buddhism, you should bear in mind that just putting salt and pepper on your food to make it taste better is immoral. To believe that you exist is immoral. To listen to music is immoral, which explains why Buddhism has such bad music as a general rule. The Hindus have way better music than the Buddhists do. Even the Muslims have better music. So, yeah, there's all kinds of things to consider. And yeah, I think what the Dalai Lama is talking about is primarily like a Mahayana Buddhist thing. In Theravada, it is interpreted differently. So rather than just wallow in the gay butt sex stuff, I think I'm just going to move on. And the next question is from Potila. And Potila says, are the Brahma viharas, 1, loving kindness or benevolence, 2, compassion, 3, empathetic joy, 4, equanimity, in order in terms of grosser mental state to finer? Okay, so let's just skip out the parentheses here. Are the Brahma viharas in order in terms of grosser mental state to finer, or is one supposed to hold all 4 states as complements? So, for instance, is the presence of metta then surpassed by mudita, or is metta attained and then mudita later joins with it? It seems that metta is a less refined state than upekkha and is really a huge focus of many Westerners, even though it is not so important in the texts as much as equanimity. Okay, so the 4 Brahma viharas, for those of you who are unfamiliar with the terms, it is, as Potila says, the first is metta, or just love, or friendliness, friendly feeling, benevolence. So wishing well to others, just sincerely from your heart, not just intellectually. 2 is compassion, or karuna, which is like feeling the pain of others. It's like you're sensitive to the suffering of others. 3 is mudita, or empathetic joy, and that's like feeling happy at other people's happiness. And a really good example is the sweet little old grandma who makes banana bread for the little kids. and the little kids are really happy eating this banana bread. And so the sweet little old grandma is just beaming with joy at the little kids who love her banana bread. She's happy because they are happy. She's happy because they really enjoy eating her banana bread. Something like that would be like mudita, is feeling happy at somebody else's happiness, just sincerely being happy when somebody else is happy. Like your friend wins the lottery. Some people would just be jealous, like, why didn't I win the lottery? Or other people might have like ulterior motives, like, oh, great, because, he might take me out partying or something. But if you're just happy for him, without any considerations of yourself, you're just happy because somebody else is fortunate and happy, then that's mudita. And then fourth is equanimity. And the standard little sentence that is the summation of equanimity in the text is kamasako, which is essentially everyone's karma is their own. So as you just accept that whatever happens to anybody is in accordance with their own karma. So again, you've got metta, karuna, mudita, upekkha. So Potila here is asking if there's like a gradation with metta at the bottom, and then they just get higher until you reach mudita. And it's not exactly that way. It's kind of that way. The Visuddhimagga, which goes over the 4 Brahma viharas, says that with regard to the first 3, metta, karuna, and mudita, if you practice meditation, you can get up to 3rd jhana practicing those 3. But with upekkha, or equanimity, you can get all the way up to 4th jhana, which traditionally in the suttas is the highest contemplative state. And it does say, like in the standard, the stock formula describing the 4 jhanas, that 4th jhana is purification of equanimity. You've got pure mindfulness, pure equanimity. So it's not that there's a gradation of, metta, then karuna, then mudita, then upekkha. It's more like the first 3 are equal. They'll get you up to 3rd jhana. And then upekkha is the highest one. That's the most exalted, and that'll get you all the way to 4th jhana. So I think that answers that question. Yeah, and it's metta is really a huge focus of many Westerns, even though it is not so important in the text. Yeah, it's like just the heart thing, and I'm not exactly sure why karuna and mudita are mostly ignored, but I'll just move on to Potila's next question. The talk on Dhamma and Western Buddhists was really good and not often discussed. So Potila here is referring to a video I did a couple weeks ago, I think, a few weeks ago, about the issue of supporting Western Buddhism, how Western Buddhism has kind of issues with getting support. So I'll just kind of back up and ask the question, or say this again. The talk on Dhamma and Western Buddhists was really good and not often discussed. What are your thoughts about different approaches or framing that would help educate or train Westerners into giving more Dhamma? Tithing is probably not going to work. A fee schedule, question mark. Membership, question mark. I've run into this same issue at other Dharma centers. No one has any money for a center but can spend gobs of cash on Dharma doodads and books. Yeah, that is like we were saying in the video. I mean, that is just it is an important issue with regard to Buddhism in the West, especially if you have monks, because monks aren't even allowed to handle money. They're not even allowed to feed themselves. And so you have to have people that are willing to support the monks, at least by giving them food, if they're going to live in the West, or else the monks just don't follow the rules. And this whole issue is one reason why I'm not a monk anymore. It's not the only reason, but it is a contributing factor. So let's see. I think with regard to monks in monasteries, one thing that should be borne in mind by the monks themselves especially is that monks should be easy to support. Like the Metta Sutta, which is this discourse on loving kindness is one of the most well-known discourses in Theravada Buddhism. A monk should be subaro, which means easy to support. And a lot of monks in the West, they just assume that they should be provided with a nice Dharma center and a computer room and so forth. But really, the way the monks lived in the Buddhist time, they were just radical minimalists. And I've met a few monks who really go for that in the West, and it may take that sort of thing at first. Like, I knew this one American monk, I don't think he did this for very long, but he was living in a wildlife refuge on the outskirts of San Diego, California. And then he would come in every morning with this bowl to like a soup kitchen and get food that way, and then just go back out to the wildlife refuge. And if there are monks there that are that serious, then there's a good chance, I mean, they're going to be generating some strong, good karma, I assume. And some people are going to be impressed by that and just really want to support them just because they are such, dharmic badasses. Um, but with regard to monks, also, I mean, uh, it's just been the way it is that if monks are going to live in the West, usually they have to be supported by Asians because Asians have just been conditioned from childhood, Asian Buddhists, that you earn merit by supporting monks, that you're going to go to heaven if you donate like the meditation cabin to a monastery or something like that. Um, and in the West, it's even Western Buddhists, they don't take karma very seriously. They don't take merit very seriously. So it may take some obvious benefit to lay people, um, regardless of what the benefit is, whatever it is that they think is worth the money, that they'll start paying money. Like a Dharma hall that isn't a monastery. They just go there. They got a place to go, and they have their little tribe of people that kind of share their interests and their values, and to some people that may be important enough, and especially if it deviates from the whole leftist individuality thing and it becomes a more family oriented, and you've got like sort of like a Sunday school for the little kids, and maybe teaching kids this really elementary meditation, or just yeah, I mean, it would have to cater to the needs of the group. And if it does that sufficiently, then there should be support. One would hope that people would be supportive of what they themselves approve of and what makes them happy. So, like the Goenka method, that's like a standard example of a success story for what is more or less Theravada Buddhism in the West. They don't charge money, although they do say that if you think you've gotten benefit from this, then if you do donate, then you're helping someone else after you to go to these free retreats. And it works well enough that there are thousands of Goenka centers around the world, and it has been burgeoning. Although now that S.N. Goenka himself has passed away, and the place is being run by his sons, I think, and the Dhamma talks are just like pre-recorded, that kind of thing. I'm not sure how well it's going now, but I assume it's still relatively prosperous. So there are ways that it can be done, and I'm not exactly sure how it would be done. I made some attempts, and it yeah, it's like what Potila says here. It is pretty much true that yeah, it's just contrary to Western culture, I think, that you donate money to a monastery, or even more, to just bring food, that kind of a thing. People might be able to cut you a check or something, but they're just too busy to come in the morning and offer food to the monks, and then you have to do it respectfully with both hands, and preferably bow and everything, and that's just it's so un-American that yeah, I am skeptical of how well it's going to work in the West. I mean, it can. I'm not saying it's impossible, but it is cutting across the grain. So the big question there is, I'm really not sure what the best way of going about it would be. And I assume it might be different for different groups because different groups want different things. So, yeah, I mean, even just trying to train them of the benefits of supporting um, monks or supporting people that are genuinely striving for enlightenment. I mean, if you can't become enlightened, then at least you can help somebody else go for it, you know? And people in the West, especially, they just don't get it, or they don't see it, or they just are so skeptical of monks that they just think they're all just a bunch of lazy freeloaders or something. But really, it's like if you're supporting a monastery or even a Dharma hall, you're supporting like higher consciousness. You know, you're making a donation, which eventually indirectly is causing the level of consciousness in the world to go up a little bit. And I mean that is good. So, but then again, it's kind of abstract. So really, it's gonna have to just realistically be a matter of people. They think they're getting something of sufficient value that they're willing to pay for it to keep it going. And what that's going to be is anyone's guess. I mean, it could just be some really charismatic Dharma teacher that makes people feel really good, may not even help them become enlightened, but just makes them feel really good. And that could be good enough. Or maybe there'll be some kind of syncretism. People will come up with a form of Buddhism or Theravada Buddhism that really kind of meshes with American culture. And, they'll have ceremonies that are specially tailored to be in harmony with the Western mindset, and holidays and this kind of thing. But yeah, I really can't say what it would be. So I'm just going to go on to the next question here. Or, I mean, getting back to that first question though, yeah, it may just take an eccentric rich person to just dump a load of money onto a Dharma hall or a monastery or something. Okay, next question. What has been the biggest change in returning to everyday American life as a layperson? Well, pretty obviously for me, the biggest change in returning to everyday American life as a layperson is having a mate, just being like very intimate with another, very sweet, soft, loving little person. That for me is like the biggest change. And in some ways, it's been a big challenge because it's so different from what I'm used to. I've lived so long just alone, like as a hermit, pretty much. And as a monk, you learn to see others pretty much as stimuli. In the scene, there's only the scene. In the herd, there's only the herd. And so, like a monk who's practicing strictly, a person standing in front of you talking, it's just like a visual perceptions, auditory perceptions, and so forth. And you just kind of deconstruct the other person, and that doesn't work in a relationship. I mean, you've got like another me that you're forming like a symbiosis. And so it is just a radical change for me, and it's good. I think it's very helpful to me, among other things, which we needn't get into at the risk of TMI. So yeah, that's been the biggest change in returning to everyday American life is just having a mate with whom I am loving and intimate after being a hermit for so long. So the next question, also from Potila. You were last in the daily grind 30 years ago. What strikes you as being uniquely different about the America you left when you ordained? Not so much in philosophy, but ordinary life. Well, when I first came back to America in 2011, the main thing that really struck me was just everything was digital. And it's even more that way now, it's 10 years later. Um, I mean, you used to pay your bills, you'd have to sit down with the checkbook and envelopes and stuff, and you'd pay your bills. And now it's just you just click on this stuff on the internet, and your bills just automatically get paid out of your checking account. Or you used to get a paycheck. When you work, you get a paycheck. Now it just feeds just directly into your bank account. And I mean, you could go through life in America now without even handling money. It's all plastic and these taps on phones and stuff now. So that would be the most radically different aspect of life. A lot of things are pretty similar to the way they were back in the late 80s, early 90s. I mean, the hairstyles, clothing styles aren't all that different. I mean, there's weird colors. More people have tattoos now. Um, the music, I mean, it's worse, but it's really not extremely different. I mean, a lot of things. It's like with regard to technology and so forth, a lot of the digital stuff is continuing to advance, but like ballpoint pens are pretty much the same. Pencils, so a lot of stuff is just essentially the same as it was before. So yeah, it's just everything's digital. So I'm going to move on to the next question from Motorhead. And Motorhead says, what about the theory that it's people's karma that is behind murder and that we have all been guilty of such things? Without darkness, there is no light. Well, that is true. It's going with Buddhist philosophy, especially orthodox like Abhidhamma, and I'm inclined to go along with this. It's like every vedana you experience, every feeling that you feel is the fruition of karma, either present karma or past karma. And so, anything that happens to you is like the fruition of karma. And there are people that disagree. There's somebody who tries to correct this statement in the comments sometimes. And I'm just going with what Abhidhamma teaches. I mean, there are suttas that will say this and that. Some will say, it's also the weather or also like food or whatever, but still. So yeah, it's like assuming that there is rebirth, that this life after life after life. Then yeah, we've done all sorts of things. We've been murderers. We've been murdered. We've been rapists. We've been raped. We've been robbers. We've been robbed. All these things have been going on. So yeah, but you can't really justify murdering somebody by saying that it's their own karma to be murdered, even though that's true, because although for them it's the fruition of their karma, you are making new karma by murdering somebody because every volitional act is making new karma. So, I mean, you can punch somebody in the nose and say, well, it's their karma to be punched, which is true, but nevertheless, you are making new bad karma for yourself. I mean, they're kind of paying off an old karmic debt, but you are making new bad karma for yourself, which is getting you more stuck in samsara in all probability. So, yeah, I think you can't really justify doing bad things by saying that the recipients of those bad things are just, it's just a matter of their own karma. And technically, that's true, but still, I mean, it doesn't justify you making new bad karma. It doesn't justify you being the one who is fulfilling the fruition of their karma. Even if you don't do it, somebody else probably will. But it's just not a justification for being immoral. So finally, the last person to ask questions is Chaplin. And Chaplin says, if you could sit down with your dad today, what would you talk about and what do you think he would feel about your life path and where you are today? Okay, well, my father died, gosh, more than 10 years ago, I think. And so if I could sit down with my dad today, what would I talk about? Well, first of all, I'd just be exclaiming on how happy I was to see him again, giving him hugs. And so first there would be that, just the exclaiming about how cool it is to see him again. And then probably I'd be telling him about, what I've been doing with my life and how do I think he would feel? I think he would be happy and proud. I really do. I mean, he thought being a monk was kind of extreme. He was proud of me, but he thought I was kind of overdoing it by being a monk. And I'm sure he'd be happy with my mate. And let's see. Plus, I'm kind of doing the sort of work he used to do. He was a longshoreman. He loaded logs onto ships, and I'm kind of, I mean, I'm not loading logs onto ships, but still, I'm kind of doing that kind of, oh, sort of blue collar work, sort of in kind of a guy job where you wear gloves and stuff. And one other thing I might talk to him about, if it seemed right at the time, is that my father was just a Democrat his whole life. In fact, he was kind of a socialist. He was like a old school macho socialist, like Jack London. And I would just like to point out to him what a demented freak show, what like a sick cult the new left has become. And it'd be really interesting just how he would feel about the Democratic Party now. A lifelong Democrat, and then seeing, what it's like now. But I wouldn't want to be cruel to him. I mean, if I'm just getting to see him one more time after he has risen from the dead. So yeah, I'd have to feel into that one. So, Chaplin's second question, what is your favorite meal? Well, I'm tempted to say butter pecan ice cream. I do have that for dinner occasionally. Um, but it's kind of not really a meal. I don't know. I don't think that's what Chaplin has in mind. So, another honest answer is just whatever my sweetheart puts in front of me because she's a really good cook. So, whatever I'm eating with her at the time is my favorite meal. Um, or if I'm just like up against the wall and I have to answer something, it's hard to say. I mean, I like pan fried oysters. I like salmon. I don't know. Pizza's good. Italian food in general is good. I don't know. I really don't have a favorite meal. I guess there's lots that I like. And so finally, Chaplin's last question and the last question of the evening. How is your infamous quest for credit rating going after living off the grid most of your life? Yeah, well, I'm pleased to announce that just a couple weeks ago, I finally got a credit card, and it's one of those secured cards. So you have to have a deposit of like $400. That was what I'd use for a deposit, and then you can't use the credit card for anything that costs more than $400. So it's kind of a wimpy little credit card, which is really all I need because I just use the credit card mostly for ordering something on the internet or something like that. But at first, I couldn't even get a secured card, like one of those, the wimpy ones, um, because not only did I not have a credit rating, I didn't have 3 months worth of bank statements. And you had to, if you didn't have a credit rating at all, you had to at least show your bank statements for the past 3 months. And I didn't even have that. So I had to wait until I had started a bank account and kept that going for 3 months, and then I was able to get this credit card. But it's I can't get like a normal credit card that isn't the secured one until my credit rating goes up. Right now, I'm kind of at the high end of the yellow zone. It's like a 649 or something like that, and everything is an A. I got grade A everything except for the age of my credit rating, which is only a few months. So yeah, I don't know how long that's going to take. It's going to be a slow climb upwards. But now that I've got the credit card, at least I can earn more brownie points on the credit rating. So yeah, I do have the credit card now, and the credit rating is now um, moving upwards. It's not only existent, but it's up into the high yellow, inching towards green. So that's good, I assume. I mean, I've never had a credit card in my life until just a few weeks ago. So, but that's another change. Um, Getting back to an earlier question, it's like, yeah, that is strange how yeah, money is it's so, it's not just this paper and metal stuff now. It's just this whole, it's like a web. It's like this invisible digital web that everything is all interconnected. It's really strange. So in a lot of places, they won't even take cash anymore, which should be illegal. I mean, it says right on the money, this is legal tender for all debts, public and private. And then you've got like hotels that just, I'm sorry, sir, but we will not accept cash. You have to have a credit card. So I almost slept on the street in New Orleans just because I had plenty of cash. I could have paid for a hotel room, but they wouldn't take it, and they were quite willing to let me just sleep on the street, just rather than accept cash. But yeah, I do have a credit rating now, and that is the last question. And so, so long as you keep asking, I will keep doing these Q&As and keep answering questions. Oh wait, I am reminded of something. There was another question that somehow did not wind up on this list, and I think it was from Potila asking about. Um, let's see, it was about live chats on the Discord server. Whether we're going to have live chats on the Discord server, which is something that has been discussed, has been bandied about a little bit. And yeah, I'm willing. I think it would be good for a lot of the my supporters on Subscribestar and just people who are on the Discord server that's associated with the Subscribestar channel to interact with each other. So, I mean, if people really want to do that, then I can make a little announcement on the Discord server, and people can give feedback on, like, for example, times and days that would work the best, because there are people around the world. You got people in Europe and people in Australia and so forth that trying to get one time that works is going to be very tricky. So yeah, I am willing, and I'm just kind of shy, and you can tell how bashful I am just from looking at me. So yeah, that's I am kind of shy about getting this kind of thing going, like group chats and so forth. Although I am willing, so we can work on that. And I do apologize if people have been eagerly anticipating group chats on the Discord server, but we can still do it. So as I was saying, now that all the questions have been answered, um, if you have questions about Buddhism in particular, meditation, comparative religions, philosophy, Burma, me, that kind of thing, anything that you think I might be able to answer intelligently, then you are more than welcome to submit questions in the comments below the YouTube or BitChute videos, or on Subscribestar. I make an announcement usually a few days before I do the Q&A, although this time it was about a week. Or if you are on the Discord server, there is a Q&A room there where you can leave your questions. And the Subscribestar and the just the Subscribestar, I think, are in the links below, so you can see where that is. And just feel free to ask questions, and read my books if you want, which are also in the links below, and be happy.